Good Friday, everyone. Welcome to the Volquest.com podcast with Jesse Simonton, Rob Lewis, and Austin Price. I'm Brent Hubbs. Glad to have you along with us. What a wild and interesting week it's been for the University of Tennessee. We do the podcast on Tuesday. We're talking about, Trey. We didn't know what was going on and all this. Now, all of a sudden, as we're here on Friday, Trey Smith's back. Cade Mays is in town. Rob, you just never know at the University of Tennessee. Things change. Things are always moving. Things are always a front, it seems like, are always on the move. It's kind of crazy.
It's good news for a change, though. It seems so often, it's injuries. Go back to the preseason, with
Emmett
Gooden. Stuff. Bad stuff happens a lot in Tennessee. Trey Smith is a perfect example. Bad stuff, has happened to him during his career. So to have that happen, to have the Cade Mays news break this week. Brandon Kennedy getting the elusive 6 year of eligibility that is always just a crapshoot. A lot going right for Tennessee's football program.
Yeah, Jesse, maybe it is the decade of the Vols.
Yeah,
10 days in.
10 days in. Yeah, I was going to say, really ever since what happened at Alabama, the news has been positive. It's been about JG bouncing back. It's been these comeback wins. It's closing out. With a big second half scoring barrage against South Carolina, making the stand at Kentucky, finding a way, to kind of snap the skid against Missouri, Vanderbilt, and then what they did in the comeback in the Gator Bowl, and then this first week.
If you told Tennessee fans exiting on Monday after Bama, after the whole JG drama that you just described, that all this was going to happen, nobody would believe that.
Do you think that after?
Twitter yesterday was going insane. I'm sure it's going insane right now too, but it was going insane on Wednesday and Thursday. With fans saying that Tennessee is now one of the favorites for the SEC East. Now we'll see if that's how it plays out, but optimism is at an all-time high right now for Tennessee.
Do you think that after JG fumbled and Diggs ran it back 100 yards from the goal line for a touchdown, the football gods finally just said, "All right, that's enough. That's enough."
y'all been in punishment long enough.
It's been 10 years. That's enough.
It's funny because forever, every time something bad happens, Tennessee fans are like, how much longer do we have to pay for the Sterner stumble?
Felipe Franks, Hail Mary, Callaway, 4th and 13. Some of the most improbable things that have happened in the last 10 years have happened in Tennessee.
And right now the improbable is in a positive way for Tennessee. Let's talk a little bit about Trey Smith's decision to come back. First of all, clearly there was a lot. Rob, this had a lot of personal decision in it. It wasn't just about a number. It wasn't just about a business decision. Clearly there was a lot of emotions involved with this, and his decision to return for his senior year, get his degree, and to continue to play for his football team.
It was apparent that getting the degree part was a big part of it. And I'm not trying to be cynical, because I really believe Trey saying that graduating was important because of what he told his mother. But I also think it was pretty clear he didn't like the number he got back from the NFL. I think maybe if he would have gotten back a first round grade, that he might have done summer school.
Yeah. Well, because the way it works now is that you either get 1, 2, or they tell you to go home. They tell you to go back.
Right.
And Trey did not get into specifics of what exactly that number was, just that it was not what he wanted to hear, and that they advised him to return to school. Rob and I voiced our opinion on the Tuesday pod, and I even wrote it. I would never begrudge a player's decision to come or go. If I were sitting in Trey Smith's shoes, I would have gone ahead to the NFL. I still think, even talking with the doctor was up there, Pruitt, Trey, there still seems to be a little bit of uncertainty about how he believes he's going to develop in terms of practice time. Jeremy hinted that maybe they would try to do one contact practice a week for Trey this
he
coming
said that at
season.
First, but then he
backtracked on that
and said that was going to be the plan going forward.
That's the plan, but they don't have it. It's not something. Toppelmeyer asked him a follow-up, and there was no firm deal in place there. So I'll be curious. Can he improve his draft stock? Because I do think that he spoke to you about the continuity with Jim Chaney and that stuff. But how much is that going to help versus still kind of weighing that the medical concerns are never going to go away. Those question marks are going to be there a year from now, regardless of what happens, I think, in 2020.
Robin, and I don't want to – he did not get specific about this, but it certainly feels like he feels like another year removed from any kind of issue will help answer some of those medical questions in his mind. I don't know if that's what the NFL has told him, but he certainly believes that another year medical issue free, if you will help him.
Yeah, I asked him about that, and that's the impression I got. And again, speculation on my part. I feel like he's gotten that advice from somewhere else. The NFL team seeing him stay, issue free while dealing with this on the maintenance program he's on for another 12 or 13 games will enhance his stock. And I personally feel like that's probably more important for his draft stock than his game film. I mean, I think he's proven. I don't think anybody doubts that he's an NFL offensive lineman and a high round draft pick.
Yeah, I mean, look, he may not be perfect and has things to work on. Everybody does, because when you go from college to the NFL, it still remains a developmental position. But can he answer enough? Is there going to be enough that NFL teams say, hey, we're 2 years removed from that, we're going to take him off the red list or the red line list?
He's a first-team All-SEC offensive lineman. I think the questions that kept him from getting a first or second round grade are not about his game tape.
Yeah, I think it's clearly about the medical standpoint. And I don't know how many teams would have flagged him, Jesse, if he went in the draft and said, hey, we're not touching it, period. Is that half the league? Is that a third of the league, a quarter of the league? Is it 5 teams? Well, I don't have any idea. There would have been some who would have said,
absolutely,
regardless of our need, he's not on our board. Okay, so if it's 10 teams, then that changes. Where you land. You could have fallen in the 4th or 5th round.
Then you got to figure out how many of those 20 teams that you're talking about need linemen.
Right, want to guard.
Yeah.
And do they want to guard in the 3rd round if there's a receiver there? There's a lot of variables. You could never get the clear answer to that, though. I mean, it's not like he could sit here and go, but if he knew half the league was going to redline him, then that changes your landscape, too, in the draft.
It does. And just as much as we won't know if we sit here a year from now, whether those same 15 teams say, we're still not going to touch them.
Right. Do you think that the fact that the guy for the Chargers played this year without issue with it, do you think that the NFL can come around would come around to it more and be more comfortable with it? I don't know what his maintenance plan is, okay? I don't think anybody, including Trey, you admitted he doesn't. But the fact that somebody is playing that position in the league who has dealt with blood clots remains in the league.
I would say it couldn't hurt. I mean, that would be the simplest answer.
Yeah. So, but bottom line is Tennessee, Trey feels like he can help himself a lot by coming back. And he's betting on himself. We won't know the answer to that until a year from now, whether it was the right decision for him or not for him.
And there's no doubt that this helps Tennessee tremendously.
Yeah, so, and that's where I was going next.
Yeah.
I mean, from a Tennessee perspective, if you want to look at it from this team,
you still need your 2 freshman tackles to have a big spring and leading into fall, but it takes the pressure off a little.
But you're bringing everybody back on your offensive line who played.
Really,
who
on
played
both
for
lines
you.
of scrimmage. I mean, both lines of scrimmage.
And that's why Tennessee's going to be a little bit of a darling pick, even though they got questions at quarterback. Everybody in the East got questions at quarterback, okay, except for Florida with Kyle Trask, okay. But Tennessee's bringing everybody back in the line of scrimmage in what is a line of scrimmage league, which will give them. Some people will give them a lot of, hey, Tennessee's really on the move here.
Yeah, I mean, I had an analysis piece that came up right after Trey. And obviously, the wild card here is Cade Mays, and I think there's optimism that he is going to get said waiver. So we'll see there. And I put in all caps in the piece. If this is kind of how some of these sliding door dominoes go, but you're returning everybody. I think it's going to elevate the competition in the room, which is something that I expect we're going to hear from Jeremy Pruitt. And the one time we talked to Will Friend, them both speak about, because again, as much as people like the label, Darnell and Wanye as 5 stars, Darnell Wright did not play like a 5-star as a freshman, and Karon Calvert, who has as much physical ability as any O-lineman on the team, ended up beating him out for that right tackle's job at the end of the season. Will he continue to elevate his game? Jerome Carvin was challenged midway through the year. He started the last, however many 8 games of the year. I think another wild card, I had it in the piece, what happens to Jameer Johnson? This was a lost year for him. But we sat here 6 months ago, Hubs, and he was considered the most physical. Other than Trey Smith, they thought he was the nastiest O-lineman they had on the team. He started 11 games in Pruitt's first season.
It's hard to think that he's not going to it's hard to think that he'll be here next year, in my opinion.
I agree, and I either said, but he's either going to be a real factor on this start on the team, or he will be seeking greener pastures elsewhere.
Which would likely be because he can't.
But he would have transfer down. And
yes.
does he want to do that?
Exactly.
I mean,
so that's what I'm saying. So he's
right.
a wild card in my opinion.
Right. Well, and I think the easy answer for Tennessee with him now is you go to him. You go into him, Rob, spring practice. Buddy, it's all on you. Okay,
yeah,
you know what's out here. You want to play, you got to go earn it. I mean, you didn't go earn it. I think there was a little bit of a sense from him that he kind of thought he was going to be the guy. He was going to be one of the guys on the left side of the line.
Yeah, and he's the one guy. I mean, was there anybody else on this team? I mean, I might be missing somebody or at least somebody that finished the season that took to social media and made the kind of
exactly. I noted that too. I mean, he made the opaque tweets that were. I
mean, if I'm running the show here, I'm not taking that from my ninth best offensive lineman. I mean, we're going to all get in the boat and row in the same direction.
Right, that's right. I mean, and that's what I'm saying. He's back because of the increase in competition and the depth that they have there. They don't need him. Okay, I'm not saying he can't help them, but I'm saying they don't need him. So if he wants to play, it's solely on him. Because you look at this roster from last year, heading into this past season, he's the one. I mean, you go across the board. How many guys sort of went backwards? He's a guy who went. I mean, he went backwards. He was a guy who's, as you mentioned, started a bunch of games and was a non-factor.
Yeah, I mean, Ryan Johnson started a bunch of games and he didn't get on Twitter and make an ass out of himself.
So I mean, that one's. I'm with you guys. I don't know if he fits here, and that's going to be up to him. He's going to have to get on board or get out the door. I'm sure will be the message he hears very quickly. Let's get to Cade. Okay, first of all, I mean, obviously, they are aggressively. They're not going to wait around and look for compliance people to help them with everything. I mean, they are aggressively going after the waiver by lawyering up, publicly knowing that they've lawyered up, which is something we saw a big part of things with the NCAA a year ago. Those student athletes who did lawyer up seemed to have more success, got quicker returns, quicker answers on their waivers than those who didn't.
Mars helped Fields and Martell.
Yeah, he helped both of them.
And then helped Shea Patterson before.
And some of his guys have not gotten it, but he has a very strong track record. And the fact that he has insight with the NCAA, with his current position, because he technically works, in a compliance manner with the NCAA too. I mean, I think Cade Mays doesn't make this move if he doesn't have confidence that he's going to get the green light.
Why does he make this move, Austin?
Not happy at Georgia.
Is that because Sam Pittman left?
I don't think it's necessarily all that.
Is it because they yo-yoed him around to multiple positions?
I think that's potentially it.
Or is it just unhappiness?
A little bit of both. And I think once Georgia decided not to recruit Cooper, and then Cooper was at Tennessee, Cade spent the bye week up here, he came to the game, and let's face it, when you're 16 and your brother's 14, he's annoying. When you're 20 and your brother's 18, you're more friends. You become, it's more of a friendship, more of a brotherhood as you get older. And I think that it's not all that, but I think that the desire was there to want to be around Cooper, to want to be around his family. And trust me, the easy decision was stay at Georgia, play next year. If your draft stock is good enough, you go, and if not, then you grad transfer back. That was the easy decision because there's no 100% check it off guarantee that he's going to be eligible. But he felt, as Jesse said, like they had a good enough case and had researched it enough and decided to pull the trigger.
It's an interesting move.
I mean, the timing of the lawsuit and all, you start doing it. This is clearly something
premeditated.
Yeah.
I mean,
100%.
I mean, you mean talking about the move?
Yes.
I mean, the lawsuit's been coming. I mean, but you're saying the decision to transfer this week has been on the books for a while. That's what you're indicating.
But
right?
I mean, the lawsuit they did not file that lawsuit until December 7th or whatever. Yeah. So, however it happened, Tennessee got, which is funny that. I think one of Cade's issues is that he did get yo-yoed around and play. To me, that makes him as attractive as anything for Tennessee. His versatility, his flexibility, the options that he gives Will Friend. Cade Mays is not a natural left tackle, but he could play any of those other 4 spots, which Tennessee was fortunate this past season. They did not suffer an offensive line injury. How rare is that? I mean, some guys were dinged up here and there, but nothing was major. Cade gives you that, again, caveats aside, if he's eligible, gives Will Friend some major flexibility next season. I would think he'd be the natural, contender because he has more upside. I mean, Carvin at right guard, that I had his snap count in my piece. He's played way more at right guard than any other position, like over 600 of his 1,000 some odd snaps. But he can play some right tackle. He can play center. It's a valuable little piece that's kind of this Swiss Army knife that Tennessee can kind of plug in.
Well, it's just what his dad did, Rob, when he was here. They played him all over the place. I mean, one game he would be at tackle, the next game he'd be at guard, one game it's right side, one game it was left side. That was a Philip Fulmer staple.
And he was really athletic.
He was, really, really athletic.
For offensive lineman.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. The amount of money that Kevin would have made in the NFL, I mean, he would have played a long time in the NFL had he not injured his knee training for the NFL draft. Here in Knoxville, because he would have been obviously a really good player. So you got those two things on your with the offensive line. You got Joe Doyle goes into transfer portal. Anybody else? I mean, classes have started. I mean, is this roster set till spring, and then we see what moves happens after spring?
I think it's likely set till spring. That makes the most sense. Because they kind of got rid of the guys that were not really happy.
Right.
Now, what does Jameer Johnson do? I mean, we just talked about that. I mean, that's one I would watch in the coming days, just because, does he look and go, gosh, I ain't gonna play here. I didn't play the back end of the year really, and I need to bounce out of here. Or does he, take the wait and see approach, play the spring, and then.
Yeah, his whole transfer situation may be challenging because he's already transferred. What, he transferred out of high school to junior college and back to here. I mean, he's not an easy to bounce guy. But maybe somebody else moves. But you've gone to class. You're not past the drop ad deadline. But guys are in school, so we'll see if anybody else doesn't or makes a move or doesn't make a move. On the coaching front, more moves coming. We think potentially. I think it's very fluid. I mean, I do. I don't think anything's locked up in terms of he's got one spot to fill, and that's where it's at. I think there's still a lot of moving parts out there that could create some more movement for Tennessee. Not saying it will happen, but I think that potential is definitely there.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think that you're looking at – I think probably if you're setting, a number, I would say 2 makes the most sense as far as more moves.
What's what you said? Staff. You set the over-under at 3. You said 3 months ago, right, Jesse?
Yeah, and 1 is off the board.
Right.
1 has happened, and I would say I'm going to agree with Austin that I would expect at least 2 more.
Couple more to take place.
And there could be more than that, or there could be, like you just said. I mean, fluid.
Well, and
just like coaching, just like recruiting. I mean, things change. Trey Smith, there was folks that said a week ago that weren't quite sure what Trey was going to do, and then the rumblings in the last 4 or 5 days was that he had made the decision to stick around.
Which, by the way, it sounds like he made it Monday night.
Yeah.
And kind of went to bed with it Monday night.
When he met with Jeremy and them over in Jackson.
Right. Go ahead, I didn't interrupt you.
And so what I was going to say is that could have changed Thursday morning. He could have woken up or gotten a phone call or whatever, but it didn't. So I would set it that there's going to be at least 2 more staff changes.
Yeah, and people have asked, what's the latest on the running back deal? He's not in any rush.
Coach
Pruitt's not in any rush, and here's why. Because if you're going to have more change, and you're going to have to give some guys some bumps that are on staff, then you need to figure out where your salary money is, where your pool is. How much money do you have? It may cost you more to bring in a more higher end defensive line coach if you decide to make a move on Rocker or a guy to replace Chris Rumpf. Whereas but you may get them cheaper. You don't know, so it depends. That could determine what happens with the running back hire. If they have more money, then I think Jay Graham is right at the top of the list. If they have to go cheaper, I look more along the lines of Montario Hardesty.
Yeah, and also what kind of pool is Philip? Philip Fulmer's not going to take the pool down, but is he going to grow that pool? Is he going to say, hey, I'm bumping up X amount of dollars for your pool, sort it out however you want to sort it out, or is it going to be, hey, you basically got what you had to work with, manage it that way. Those are things that Jeremy Pruitt and Philip Fulmer are obviously talking about. All right, let's flip it over to recruiting right quick. He had a chance to visit with Jay Hardy. Feels like Tennessee's got a chance, Austin, but maybe that's a bigger uphill climb, or is it about the climb you thought after talking to him?
About what I thought. I said in the chat last week that I thought you'll know by January 25th. How the visits go coming out of the dead period. Does he make it up here for a basketball game? If all those things actually do happen and the visits go well, you're going to know, I think, okay, you're beating your head against the wall, or okay, we have a shot, with 7 or 8 days to go. So I think by the 25th of January, you'll have a good idea of whether they have a real shot at this or not. Right now, people have asked, I know you put 51%, and I think it's very down the line, because I thought when he didn't sign that was open invitation to come to Tennessee. And see, I asked him that last night. I said, why did you not sign? And he goes, well, I was in Florida at a basketball tournament. I said, you can send that in from anywhere in the world. And then it was like, well, I wanted to sign with my teammates. So, we're changing our story here when we get called on the carpet on the facts.
It's clearly an open invitation to recruit him, but it's not an open invitation to say, I don't want to go to Auburn. I think it's enough people. It sounds like enough people around Jay Hardy
are in his ear,
convinced him, hey, give Tennessee a better chance. Okay, you were all Tennessee, and then all of a sudden it flips. Well, let's make sure, give it a chance.
I think it's funny. And I'm not going to say that he doesn't have a good relationship or does or doesn't or whatever. I think it's funny that he keeps talking about the relationship stuff, but he's been to Tennessee like 15 times. He's been to Auburn like 3 times.
Right.
So, I guess you can technically have a better relationship with somebody you've seen 3 times versus 15. But, it just seems like, it just seems odd. He talks about like wanting to build a better relationship, but Jay doesn't really talk. He told me last night, I'm not talking to Auburn's coaches. I'm not talking to Tennessee's coach. I'm not talking to anybody. Well, if you want a better relationship, shouldn't you, want to talk on the phone and try to build it a little? I don't know. It's a weird dynamic.
Yeah, his whole recruitment's been bizarre. Because he was going to go multiple times, move the dates back, then all of a sudden it's a flip to Auburn, and then all of a sudden he doesn't sign.
And his comments to AP, last night, they were pretty striking, just about him almost challenging Tennessee's coaches to kind of come to the table in terms of building that relationship, which is interesting because, as AP said, it's not like he hadn't been a familiar face up here.
Yeah.
But.
Well, and if you're Tennessee, I think the challenge is, what does he want? Like, what does that mean? Okay, you want a better relationship. Like,
well, he specifically noted that he didn't have a relationship with the D-line coach.
Right. But we know Rocker's been in the house multiple times.
Right.
He's been up here and been around Rocker. Now, maybe Rocker has not worked the phones as hard as he should. I don't know.
Right.
But that's been a standard line from him for a while, is the lack of relationship with Tracy Rocker. Can that improve over the next couple of weeks? We'll have to wait and see. D. Beckwith on the board. That one's going to get wild because he's going to have a traditional recruitment. He hasn't gotten started yet. It's getting ready to get started.
It is, but he's going to do all this in the middle of what, Hubs? Basketball season. So, to me, this is where it's going to get weird because he loves basketball so much. He's, high schools play Fridays. They play some Saturday games. It's going to be interesting. Does he punt on basketball games to take some of these visits? I know he's got stuff scheduled, but it's just for a guy that loves basketball as much as he does. I think it's interesting that he's going to, kind of do all this right in the middle of, the regular season for those high school games that determine district tournament seeding and stuff. How's the basketball coach going to handle all that down there at Florence? And Tennessee set up for that last visit. I think for him, those early visits when Will Friend and whoever else goes in over there to see him, just keeping Tennessee right in the forefront of his mind until he can get to that last official visit are key.
Well, and that's not very long because
it's not.
You can go in the
Did
house.
You say 16 days?
Yeah, you go in the house starting January the 16th. Okay, if he takes a visit that weekend, you only got a couple of times to go in the house before he visits Tennessee. Everybody else has only a couple of times to go in the house before he visits Tennessee.
And Norvell's trying to get involved there.
Right.
Florida State's come knocking on the door, so we'll see. Does he punt on a Florida visit or a Kentucky visit? But yeah, we said it's on Tuesday. We don't have to it's in the war room last night. Tennessee's board is fairly small. Cade has now grabbed one of those spots. They'll go after Broderick Jones, but I think Tennessee is likely done at the offensive line. Do they hold another spot or two for a grad transfer, whether it's a wide receiver? Do they take Caldwell, the East Carolina guy, or do they hold for another pass rusher?
Or do they take Velus Jones?
See, I think they're going to probably end up taking Velus Jones over Jakari Caldwell,
Which is a grad transfer wide receiver.
because you want. You feel like you need insurance. You feel like you have a need there. I mean, when you kind of go over the receivers, they got 7. And one of the 7 is D'Angelo Gibbs, who you have high hopes for because he's been so good on scout team.
But as Jesse has said, he hadn't done it in a game.
Yeah, he's not played any college games. So maybe if the light is still on in the games, then you're like, okay, we've got us a dude. But doesn't always translate one way or the other.
Well, and as you outlined, Jones has you're not really getting a huge known with Velus Jones because other than returning kicks, he has not been able to get on.
But he's the one thing that he does have, the one thing Tennessee does not really have, which is the same thing Hyatt's going to bring, which is the speed. I mean, he was a state 100-meter champion in Alabama.
And he may not have played a ton, but he has played some. He has practiced. He's physically a little more advanced than maybe a high school kid is. Who would be the Caldwell kid's probably a definite red shirt right out of the gate. So do you want a 4-year guy, or do you feel like you need an insurance policy? So those are some of the challenges that you got in recruiting. Let's hit basketball right quick, Rob. Missouri, Tennessee needed. It wasn't pretty at times, but they found a way.
Bowden back.
Bowden's pretty good in the first half, disappears in the second half until he makes a huge shot down the stretch. You got Santiago, who goes on his own little run there. But Tennessee finds a way in a much-needed win because they got a bank wins on the front end.
Yeah,
of the
I mean, I'm not trying to build Missouri up as some good basketball team because they're not. But I mean, Tennessee needed that game badly, and I mean because they got it, the way the schedule falls, I mean they got a legit chance at starting 5-1, 6-1 in the SEC. I mean their toughest game coming up in the next 3 weeks is at Georgia next Wednesday. That's tough. I mean Georgia's pretty good, and they're kind of getting fired up about the program. But you're home to South Carolina on Saturday. You go to Vanderbilt next Saturday, who did show up pulse last night or Wednesday night against Auburn. But you got Mississippi at home, who's not very good. Texas A&M is an abomination. I mean, they beat Ole Miss the other night, but I think that was a cripple fight.
It was a rock fight. I watched.
They're not. Neither one of those are very good. So I mean, So you're exactly right. Tennessee had to bank that one, and the way the schedule sets up right now, I mean, Rick's got a chance to get this team better in some winnable games. Man, he's got to start playing some young guys, in my opinion. He basically played 6 people the other night. He got mad at Camwa, he got mad at Gaines and jerked him. I think Camwa played 2 minutes in the second half. Now the good news was Jalen Johnson maybe played the best game of his career. I think that was the first time he was ever on the floor in crunch time in a SEC conference game. Played well. I think that's a really good sign for Tennessee going forward. And I think Rick might have hit on something with playing basically 4 guards with East Pons at one time. I thought that lineup was really key in the second half.
What is this team's identity going to be? I think they're still trying to figure it out. What is it?
I don't think they know.
I mean, is it penetrate kick? Is it? I mean, they don't want to drive to the rim and get to the free throw line.
They don't have a guy that can really do that. I mean, I think you've seen Santiago, be able to drive and create for others. I don't think we've seen. I mean, in these 2 games, I don't want to be critical of the kid. I mean, I think what he's done is remarkable. But I don't know that they have an offensive identity, especially with the way Bowden's struggling. I mean, he showed up. He had 9 first half points the other night. That was good. But then, as you mentioned, I mean, he disappeared in the second half. But I think Missouri made some adjustments to really go after him after halftime, and he had a hard time finding an answer to that. So, offensively, I don't know what their identity is. I mean, Rick always wants to play inside out. I just don't think this team's capable. I mean, I'll be surprised if he doesn't explore some options with that 4-guard look around Eves and or Volquest.
And the other thing this team's got to do is they got to learn to finish because they had Missouri where they could have knocked it out.
Could have knocked them out.
Back in it. I mean, it's
up 12.
That's the youth that shows up. The yo-yo of the youth is you got a chance to put it away and you don't get it completely put away. So
turnovers incredible. I mean, they won a game on the road where they had 20 turnovers the other night. You will not see that happen.
No, you shouldn't see that happen. And things not going well for Conzo Martin up there. That's going to be an interesting rest of the year for him.
But remember, I told you earlier, I was talking to our guy out in Missouri that because of the way his contract's set up, because he made the NCAA tournament that first year, it kicked in a clause. They can't fire him this year, no matter what, no matter which
Which is, hey, hats off to his agent
Remarkable.
for putting that one in there. So that's the latest in the Tennessee basketball front. We'll see what happens with them this weekend. We'll have full coverage of that coming up this weekend. And again, we'll see what kind of identity this team can find or not. I want to skip back to recruiting for just a second because I forgot one thing. You mentioned you mentioned the offensive lineman from down in Georgia who's committed to Georgia, Broderick Jones. Auburn loses their offensive line coach. Cade Mays is here. Knows about, a lot of people have asked this on the board. How much does Tennessee's, I don't want to say stock with him, chances with him, does it change with the Auburn situation, with the fact that you got a Georgia guy here who's going to tell him all about Georgia? You know, when he gets here on a visit, Georgia's got some uncertainty. Is it a big deal or no?
I think, if anything, that if there's a clearer path to the field at Georgia now. Honestly, if anything, I think Tennessee's stock rose when Auburn lost their offensive line coach because I think that hurts. Anytime you lose your O-line coach, it hurts.
But then Cade coming actually dinged Tennessee for that.
But dinged a little bit. But I honestly think Georgia would be the top team. Tennessee is slightly past Auburn in my mind. And I'm not talking to the kid. I'm just going off of it.
But Georgia seems like, I mean, that's where he's been going to school.
Yeah,
right?
and apparently the tight end coach was actually his lead recruiter at Auburn. So he still has the guy who he maintains the most contact with. But yeah, we had it in the war room that I think the irony is that with Tennessee's with getting 3 guys here that maybe you didn't presume would be on the roster in 2020. With Trey, who could play tackle but won't, but Cade and then Kennedy, getting those guys back, suddenly their O-line room is looking a little fuller than in both Auburn and Georgia.
And Tennessee's got 2 young tackles.
He's also never been here.
Right.
He's been to Auburn and Georgia a ton of times. And so when he visits here next weekend, that'll be his first time at Tennessee. So can't rule it out. Seems like a long shot still. I think, again, Cade, if you got Velus Jones, they're going to do everything they can to flip Jay Hardy and get D Beckwith.
And go to the house.
And then maybe you go to the house and maybe you have one spot, for a summer guy, if my math's right.
Yeah, if there's a pass rusher falls your way that you really like or something crazy happens that way, perhaps. So it's not.
That would be if you're going to take Velus Jones. That would be. I think Tennessee would need to really kick the tires on a grad transfer outside linebacker because I think that's going to be a hole in this roster next year.
That would be though. You would taking 26. That would take away from the 21 class.
Yeah, and I'm saying I would do that if Tennessee if Tennessee seriously thinks they can compete for the East next season. I would think they need to go.
I don't mind giving one away. It's when you give 2 and 3, and that's what Butch did. He was robbing Peter to pay Paul all the time.
If you're going to give one away for your future, it has to be a difference maker guy at a great position of need, which is exactly what you're saying. You look at this roster coming out when you come out of spring practice. If DeAndre Johnson's still erratic, okay, you know what you have with Kevon Bennett. If there's nothing developing, if Roman Harrison is still, you're not sure, Crouch, you feel like you have to play him inside, then you're sitting there going, look, we may be an outside backer away, a rush guy away from having a chance to win the East, to essentially play Florida for the East. Then you try to go find somebody if that's where you think you are. I think that's how you use grad transfers.
You asked earlier in the show or earlier in the podcast if we saw anything else coming. The one name I would watch, and I don't think he's leaving right now, but I think he potentially could leave sometime this spring or after spring ball, is Tim Jordan. I'm not sure if he sees a path here to real playing time going forward. Tim Jordan's one I would watch. And if that happens, then depending on how things fall these next couple of weeks with Beckwith and Hardy and any other grad transfer, maybe you look at a running back.
My issue with the grad transfer running back is most of those. I mean, you're getting a guy who couldn't win somewhere. I mean,
you got 3, and you just signed 3 guys. If one of those guys isn't good enough to play running back, then you shouldn't sign him in the first place. I think that would be a mistake.
Yeah,
I don't think Tim Jordan is going to be the only person that leaves after the spring either.
Right.
And this is where I think we sort of got in this discussion, whether it was off air in the Tuesday pod. I do think they need to look at the transfer rules and say, because you don't get it costs you a number to take a kid, but you don't get a number back when you lose someone to a
Well,
transfer.
it's funny you mentioned that. In Orlando, in 2 weeks from now, I think it's when you have the AD's convention, not the coaches convention, but you have the legislative body convention, I guess.
Right.
One of the hot topics is going to be transfers, and I think you're going to see a movement because I think some ADs are finally, going to be to the presidents and like, look, let's give them a one-time transfer. This idea that everybody's got to, because everybody's going to petition for a waiver, everybody's going to lawyer up, and all these things. Let's just give them a one-time deal. I'm not saying that goes into effect immediately. I don't think that's going to happen, but I do think you're going to start to see a greater public movement on that front than we have in the past.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I'll be curious because you mentioned about how many kids just can't find homes. There's a lot of those guys that have now pulled their names out of the train. They're staying where they're at,
which is a hard thing to do because you've declared I want out of here, but I can't find greener pastures, so I'm going to come back, but I don't necessarily really want to be here. Which is a tough thing to look at. Final things as we wrap it up. It's been wild for Tennessee, all the positive news, all the good news for Tennessee. Nothing has been more wild football-wise in the SEC than what's happened in the state of Mississippi. I mean, how crazy is it that Mike Leach and Lane Kiffin are now running the state of Mississippi in football?
Well, I mean, it all when Ole Miss decided to fire Matt Luke and hire Lane Kiffin, it changed everything. And I said when they hired Lane, I said Moorhead's he's a short timer.
Yeah, you did.
Well, they backed him, and then all of a sudden Ole Miss hired Lane, and all the juice went to Oxford, and Mississippi State was left with a guy who was just a bad fit, a Northeastern guy, and when they laid that egg in the Music City Bowl, it was over.
Well, and they got all the off-the-field stuff too, right, Jesse?
Yeah, I mean, they had the Willie Gay, who had been suspended, was one of the 8 guys suspended through the academic scandal throughout the season. Punches Schrader, the starting quarterback who has to miss the game. I mean, it was.
He didn't fall on a helmet.
It sounds like his eye looked worse than Shy Tuttle's.
I don't know how that's possible.
No, go Google it. It's pretty bad, especially when he's got that gnarly beard with it too. But I just think it was a situation that was untenable. And the sad thing is that everything that's been written about Moorhead is that he really is a genuinely good guy, and he kind of, I think, also realized it was not a great fit. But I don't know what is a good fit at Mississippi State.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Are these two guys bad fits in Mississippi?
I mean, Leach struggled in year 1 at Washington State. I mean, he could put up some major points, but that's a way easier job than what he just inherited. And so, kudos for getting weird. I mean, the Bulldogs are going to have to do something weird, but his air raid is not nearly as weird as it was 5 years ago.
Because everybody's playing to that to a degree.
And so the ingenuity in that, I think, is less than some. How willing is he wanting to recruit? I mean, I laughed a couple years ago. It would have been fantastic if he had come to Tennessee just because he's a nut job. But yeah, I don't know if the days are long for him or Kiffin. Kiffin just screamed that Ole Miss, does not give a flipping, anything, and they're just going for it, and they're leaning hard in to the rebel. I mean, they hired DJ Durkin.
Right.
I mean, they
well, you got a first-time AD who,
Exactly.
I mean, Lane Kiffin's just saying this is what we're doing, and he's getting whatever he wants. And look, Mike Hamilton was a young AD when he was here, and that was his hire, and Lane Kiffin basically did whatever he wanted, got kind of whatever he wanted out of it. You know what I mean? I mean, the league said don't bring Ed Orgeron back in, and Lane said I am, and Mike said, well, okay. I mean, he got whatever he wanted while he was here, and he's getting the same thing at Ole Miss. So that's going to be interesting to watch.
Northern Mississippi Fencing Companies just moved to the edge of their seat.
All the landscaping companies and everybody else. Final question, I promise, because we're not going to do a podcast before Monday night's championship game. Anybody taking Clemson?
No.
No, not as of this. Not as
of Friday.
Not as of Friday, but
closer than you think?
I do think the line is too high. Burrow's insane, and those receivers are insane, but it's been hard to bet against Dabo, And I just think Dabo just annoys me so much. I can't actually, pick Clemson to win. But it would not. I mean, we're talking about two of probably the best quarterbacks. two of the better quarterbacks. I should rephrase that in probably the last decade in terms of college football. Going up against each other with Burrow, and Lawrence.
The last two championship games, Lawrence Tua, Lawrence Burrow. Man.
Yeah, and the common thing in there is Lawrence just keeps finding a way to win. He just keeps finding ways to go back. I mean, when LSU played a good quarterback and Tua, who was not 100%, he threw for 400 yards.
Yeah.
So this is not this dominant LSU defense. I think they've improved, but they're not a dominant defense. I think take the over in this game because I think there's going to be a lot of points. Now, every time I say that, I thought there'd be a lot of points in the Tennessee-Indiana game, and it didn't turn out as many points as I thought. Don't you think there's going to be a lot of scoring in this game?
Yes.
You say that reluctantly.
Yeah, but I just think it just seems like these games, because they take forever to start. There's kind of a choppiness to them. I think we could see a second half explosion, but I would not be surprised if there's
It's a little clunky
early.
All right.
But I'm very much looking forward to this game.
Yeah.
I'm excited to watch it as just a college football fan and spectator.
Yep, should be an interesting one on Monday night. We'll talk about that, but we'll talk mostly about Tennessee football recruiting, Tennessee football, Tennessee basketball in our Tuesday podcast. That's going to do it for this Friday podcast. For Jesse Simonton, Austin Price, and Rob Lewis, I'm Brent Hubbs. Thanks for joining us. Have a great Friday, everybody.